The lake was still that morning. A pale mist floated just above the water, curling around the dock where Claire Dawson stood, her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. The house behind her white clapboard, ivy growing wild up one side, was too quiet now. It had been 6 months since David died, but the silence still hadn't settled right inside. The walls remembered him. His voice in the kitchen, his laughter when their daughter, Lily, spilled flour everywhere while helping him bake. There were still notes taped to the fridge in his handwriting, recipes, grocery lists, a reminder to pick up Lily's art supplies. Claire hadn't had the heart to take them down. She told herself she was fine. She worked, cooked, smiled when the neighbors asked how she was holding up. But every night, when the house went still and the wind carried the smell of pine through the open window, she'd wake up reaching for the other side of the bed and find it cold. It was on one of those mornings when grief had dulled into something quieter, like dust, that she decided to finally clean out. David's study. The room was exactly as he'd left it. Books stacked in uneven towers. A half-finished cup of coffee hardened on the desk, the faint smell of cedar and ink. His typewriter sat by the window, a sheet of paper still inside. The last words he'd written half-faded. Some things never reach who they were meant for. Claire paused. For a moment, she could almost hear the sound of keys clicking, the soft rhythm he used to make when lost in thought. She smiled sadly. "You and your poetic nonsense," she murmured. Then she started to pack. It took hours. She sorted through manuscripts, unpaid bills, old drafts of novels he'd never finished. He'd always been the writer. She just edited other people's words for a living. Funny how she could fix anyone's story but her own. Near the bottom of a drawer, she found a small wooden box wrapped in twine. It looked old, the kind of thing that might hold letters or keepsakes. When she untied it, she found a single envelope inside heloed with age. The ink slightly smudged. The handwriting was unmistakably David's, but it wasn't addressed to her. It said, "To Noah Whitaker." Claire frowned. She didn't know any Noah, and David had never mentioned the name. Curiosity warred with guilt for a long minute before she carefully unfolded the letter. "Noah, if you ever read this, it means I failed again. I've spent years trying to build a life that wasn't built on lies, but everything I touch turns hollow. You deserved the truth long before now, but I was too much of a coward to give it to you. I don't know how to make peace with the person I was, or what I took from you. But if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, please do. It's the only thing I've ever really wanted." David, her breath caught. The handwriting trembled at the end, as if he'd written it in the dark. She read it twice, 3 times. Then she just sat there, staring at the page until her eyes blurred. Who was Noah Whitaker? What had David done to him? And why had he never sent the letter? That night, after she put Lily to bed, Claire sat at the kitchen table with the letter in front of her. She didn't believe in signs, but the way her hand shook as she held the envelope again felt like something pulling at her. It wasn't her business. He was gone. The dead were supposed to stay silent, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this letter had been waiting years. Maybe for someone to finish what he couldn't dot. So she searched the name online. There was only one, Noah Whitaker, that came up in Vermont. An author. Or rather, a former author. No public appearances in a decade. No photos. Just a mailing address for a small cabin near Lake Grayson. Not far. Claire hesitated for days. She wrote an email, then deleted it. typed out a message, erased it again. It was Lily who made her decide. "Mum," her daughter said one afternoon, drawing at the kitchen table, "why don't you send it? You always say stories have to end." Claire looked at her, stunned. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds, she smiled faintly. "You're right, sweetheart. They do." That night, she placed the letter in a new envelope, wrote Noah's address on the front, and sealed it before she could change her mind. When she stepped outside, the wind was sharp and clean. The sky above Vermont was ink black, scattered with stars. She dropped the letter into the old blue mailbox at the corner. The clang of metal echoed in the cold air, final and quiet as she stood there. A strange calm spread through her chest. Maybe it didn't matter who Noah was. Maybe sending the letter was just her way of letting go, of sending one last piece of David out into the world so she could finally breathe again. But as she walked home under the empty sky, a flicker of something like anticipation pressed against her ribs, like a story that wasn't quite done yet. The mail truck came late that morning. The mountains around Lake Grayson were half hidden in fog, and the gravel road leading up to the cabin was slick with melted snow. Inside the cabin, Noah Whitaker sat at his desk by the window, a mug of black coffee steaming beside an old typewriter that hadn't been touched in weeks. The keys were dusted with ash from the fireplace. The last line on the paper was a single sentence he couldn't finish. Some stories end before they begin. He stared at it for a long time, the words blurring. Then, with a sigh, he tore the page out and crumpled it. The truth was, Noah hadn't written anything real in almost 10 years. Not since the accident. Not since the night that split his life in two, before and after, when the knock came. He thought it was just the delivery guy again. Another grocery box he hadn't ordered. But outside the door stood the mail carrier, holding a small stack of envelopes. Morning. "Mr. Whitaker, bit of mail for you today." He nodded, taking them without much thought. Bills, flyers. Nothing unusual until he saw it. A cream-colored envelope, handwritten. The name on it stopped him cold. To Noah Whitaker. It wasn't the name that made his chest tighten. It was the handwriting. He hadn't seen it in 12 years, but he would have known it anywhere. David's. For a long moment, Noah couldn't move. He sat down at the edge of the table, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish. It was impossible. David was dead. At least, that's what they'd told him. He turned it over. The return address was Vermont, a small town near Lake Erie. The handwriting on that part was different, softer, feminine. He swallowed hard. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered. He didn't open it right away. He poured another cup of coffee, fed the fire, paced the length of the cabin. 12 years. 12 years since he'd last heard his brother's voice, or his lies. When the envelope finally tore open, his hands shook more than he wanted to admit. Inside was the letter. Old paper, faint smell of smoke and time. He read it once, then again, each line like a blade turning slow. "If you ever read this, it means I failed again. You deserved the truth long before now. I don't know how to make peace with the person I was, or what I took from you, ... By the time he reached the signature, his hands were trembling. David. Noah leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under him. For a moment, the whole world felt like it was underwater, soundless, distorted. He'd thought he'd buried that part of his life long ago. But here it was, resurfacing like a ghost that refused to stay dead. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow began to fall again, thin and slow, catching on the window glass. Noah turned the letter over, studying the new handwriting on the envelope again. The woman who had sent it, Claire Dawson, had included a note. Just a few lines. I found this in my late husband's things. I wasn't sure if it was meant for you, but it felt wrong not to send it. I hope it brings you some kind of peace. Late husband, Noah's breath caught. So David was married and dead. He rubbed a hand across his face, sinking back in the chair. A bitter laugh escaped him. Of course you were, brother. Always the one who knew how to start over. That night he couldn't sleep. The fire burned low, throwing gold light across the floorboards. He kept seeing David's face in the flames, younger, louder, smiling that same reckless smile. The one that used to drive Noah crazy. He remembered the last time they'd spoken. It was raining. They were shouting. David had said something Noah could never take back, and then he was gone. No phone calls, no apologies. Just a decade of silence. Noah sat at the desk again, the letter beside him. He took out a sheet of paper and stared at it for a long time. He didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he just wanted to send the past back where it belonged. Maybe he needed someone else to carry a piece of it for him. He began to write, Mrs. Dawson. Thank you for sending the letter. I wasn't sure anyone still remembered that name or that man. I did know David once. He was my brother. There's more to this story than you probably realize. If you're willing to talk, I'd like to understand what happened. Maybe then we'll both find a little peace. Noah Whitaker, he read it once, folded it neatly, and sealed it before he could change his mind. When he stepped outside to drop it in the metal box at the end of the drive, the world was utterly still, snow falling soundlessly, the lake reflecting the pale blue light of dawn. As he slid the letter in, he caught his reflection in the glass. Same eyes, same shape of jaw. For the first time in years, he looked like someone else, someone he hadn't been since the day his brother left. The next morning, the letter was already on its way back through the frozen valleys, back toward the woman who still slept beside an empty bed, and didn't yet know that the man who'd written it wasn't just her husband's ghost, but his mirror. The letter came on a Wednesday. It was tucked between bills and grocery flyers, so ordinary that Claire almost missed it. But the handwriting, steady, careful, made her pause. She hadn't seen handwriting like that in months. When she turned the envelope over, her breath caught Noah Whitaker. For a moment, the world tilted. The name she'd read 100 times in her husband's letter now sat in blue ink before her eyes. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Mrs. Dawson, thank you for sending the letter. I wasn't sure anyone still remembered that name, or that man. I did know David. Once, he was my brother. There's more to this story than you probably realize. If you're willing to talk, I'd like to understand what happened. Maybe then we'll both find a little peace. Noah Whitaker. Claire sat very still. Outside, the wind rustled through the birch trees that lined the porch. Somewhere upstairs, Lily hummed to herself, playing with her dolls, but inside Claire's chest, silence. She read the letter again. He was my brother. Brother David had never told her. Not once in 10 years of marriage. Not a single photograph. Not a single name. And yet this man, Noah knew him. Knew the parts she'd never been allowed to see. For the first time since David's death, grief wasn't the loudest thing in the room. Now it was something else. Something sharper. Curiosity. That evening she made tea and sat by the window, the letter in her lap. The sun was setting over the lake, painting everything in a pale orange glow. Lily sat on the rug, drawing with her crayons a house, 2 people, a dog that looked suspiciously like a bear. "Mummy, who's that from?" she asked. Claire smiled faintly. "An old friend of Daddy's." Lily's eyes brightened. "Did he send a picture?" "No, honey. Just words." Lily thought about that for a moment. Words are better. They stay. Claire blinked, that simple truth landing somewhere deep in her chest. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, she sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. She searched the name again. Noah Whitaker. Author. There were still traces of him. Old interviews, faded book covers, a photo from a decade ago. 2 brothers at a book launch, David and Noah. Her stomach tightened. They looked almost identical, the same dark hair, the same narrow eyes, but the smiles were different. David's was easy, charming. Noah's looked like it had learned not to trust. She stared at the screen, her pulse steadying into something calm but insistent. Then she started typing. "Dear Mr. Whitaker, I wasn't expecting a reply. I didn't know David had a brother. He never spoke about his family, not once in all the years we were married. I'm not sure why, and I won't pretend to understand him better than you do, but I think maybe we both deserve to know the truth. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet. There's a coffee shop in Burlington, by the old station. Saturday, 10 a.m., Claire Dawson." When she hit send, her heart pounded like she'd done something forbidden. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was the sense that she'd just stepped into a story that had been waiting for her. The drive to Burlington took 2 hours. Saturday morning came with soft rain, the kind that blurred everything at the edges. Claire dressed simply, a cream sweater, her hair pulled back. Nothing that said widow, but nothing that denied it either. Lily stayed with her neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, who waved from the porch as Claire pulled out of the driveway. "Be safe." "Dear," the old woman called. "I will," Claire said. "It's just coffee." But her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they should have. The cafe was nearly empty when she arrived. She chose a table by the window, the air thick with the smell of roasted beans and rain on pavement. At exactly 10:02, the door opened. He stepped inside. Noah Whitaker looked like a man built from silence. Tall, shoulders tense beneath a worn leather jacket, dark hair streaked with grey near his temples. His eyes, that was what stopped her. She knew those eyes. She had kissed those eyes goodnight 100 times, and yet the man behind them was not David. He carried the same face, but time and sorrow had carved it differently, deeper, quieter, Claire. His voice was low, uncertain. She nodded, standing. "Noah." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain hit the windows harder, filling the space between words. Finally, he gestured toward the table. "May I?" She nodded again. They sat up close. She saw it, the exhaustion around his mouth, the way he looked at her like she was both familiar and foreign. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either." A faint smile. "I didn't expect to see him again." Claire looked down at her hands. "It's strange, isn't it? To lose someone and still see them." He nodded slowly. Strange doesn't begin to cover it. For a while, they just sat there, 2 strangers, bound by a man who no longer existed, both trying to understand what he'd left behind. Noah reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the letter. The old paper looked smaller now, fragile. "He wrote this years ago," he said quietly, "before he disappeared, before I stopped looking for him." She blinked. "Disappeared." He hesitated, eyes flickering. "There's a lot you don't know about David." Her voice was soft but steady. "Then tell me." The rain eased outside. A single beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, landing on the table between them, on the letter that had found its way home. After all these years, and as Noah began to speak, Claire realized this was not an ending at all. It was the first chapter of something neither of them had meant to start. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The letter lay between them like a line they weren't sure they should cross. The cafe hummed quietly around them, clinking cups, rain on glass. The low murmur of strangers talking about anything but grief. Finally, Noah exhaled and said, "It's hard to know where to start." Claire's voice was careful. "Then start where it went wrong." He gave a hollow laugh. "That's easier said than done." But after a moment, he began. 12 years ago, he said, David and I were both writing. We'd co-authored a few short stories, nothing big, but one of them got picked up by a major magazine. Overnight, everything changed. He rubbed his thumb against the rim of his cup, eyes unfocused. David wanted fame. I just wanted to write something honest. But when the magazine offered a book deal, they wanted only one author's name on the cover. They chose his. Claire frowned. That doesn't sound like him. Noah's eyes lifted calm, but sharp. Then you didn't know him the way I did. She looked away, a flash of guilt in her chest. He said we'd share the advance, that he'd tell them the truth later. But he didn't. The book sold, and suddenly David Whittaker was a name everyone wanted. What about you? He gave a bitter smile. I was the ghostwriter for my own life. Outside, thunder rumbled softly in the distance. The air inside the cafe grew heavier, like the storm was listening. Claire whispered, "So that's what the letter meant. What I took from you." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, but it wasn't just the book. It was everything." After she watched him, the lines of his face shifting in the pale light, so much like David's, yet harder, more weathered. "What happened after?" He hesitated. There was an accident. He leaned back, the chair creaking. We were driving home from a signing in New York. It was late. He was drinking. I tried to take the wheel, but he stopped, jaw tightening. We hit the guardrail. The car flipped. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. Her breath caught. And him. They said he'd died at the scene. Body burned too badly to identify. Claire's hand went to her mouth, but they found his wallet, his ring. Everything said it was him. So I believed it. He paused, eyes dark. Until 3 years later, when I got a letter, the world seemed to still. Claire's fingers tightened around her cup. From who? He looked at her for a long moment before answering. From David. Her heart lurched. That's impossible. I thought so too. But it was his handwriting. His voice. He said he'd staged it, switched IDs before the crash. Said he couldn't live with what he'd done to me, to the book, to everything. He wanted to disappear. Noah's voice dropped lower. He asked me not to look for him. Said he'd start over somewhere quiet. Said he'd found someone who made him believe in good again. He looked straight at her, and now I know who he meant. The rain outside thickened, streaking across the windows like ink. Claire couldn't breathe. Every word hit like a pulse of cold air. "You're saying—" She swallowed hard. "You're saying my husband faked his death?" "I'm saying he wasn't who you thought he was." Her hands trembled. "Why would he do that? Why would he lie to me like that?" Noah's expression softened, guilt flickering across his features. "Maybe he wanted to be someone better for you. Maybe that's why he changed his name." "Dawson wasn't his real surname, was it?" She shook her head slowly. "No, he said it was his mother's." He nodded. "It was ours." The words hung there between them, impossible and undeniable. Claire's chest tightened. The room blurred. She whispered, "You're telling me I married a man who built his whole life on lies? Who buried his name, his family, everything?" Noah's jaw clenched. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to find out this way." She stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. The cafe went quiet for a second, eyes turning toward her. "I have to go," she said, voice trembling. "Claire," she shook her head. "Don't. I can't. I can't do this right now." She stepped out into the rain, the cold hitting her like a wall. The streets shimmered with puddles, headlights slicing through the grey. She didn't care where she was going, only that she had to move. Breathe, get away from the truth pressing against her ribs. Her husband was a ghost. Her marriage, a story written under a name that wasn't real. And the man sitting inside that cafe carried his face. Noah watched from the window as she disappeared into the rain. He wanted to go after her, but something in her expression stopped him. She needed to run. He knew what that felt like. Instead, he sat back down, staring at the letter between his hands, the one his brother had written, and the one that had brought her to him. He whispered, almost to himself, "David, what the hell did you do to us?" That night, Claire drove home in silence. Lily was already asleep when she walked through the door. The lights were low, the air thick with the smell of rain and old books. She sank to the floor beside the couch, her head in her hands. When she finally looked up, her gaze landed on the fireplace and the photo above it, David, smiling, Lily in his arms. She stared at it for a long time. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached up and took it down. On the back, in faded ink, was a date, and below it, a name. Not David Dawson, David Whittaker. It rained for 3 days straight after Burlington, the kind of rain that seeps into the wood, into the bones, a soft, endless whisper, reminding you of everything you'd rather forget. Claire spent most of it watching the lake through the living room window. The water was high now, creeping over the rocks at the shore, blurring the line between what was solid and what wasn't. Lily didn't notice the change. Children rarely do when the world shifts beneath them. She played, drew, sang little songs about clouds and dragons, blissfully unaware that her mother's world had cracked open. Claire didn't tell her. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that the man in every bedtime story wasn't the man you thought he was? She couldn't, so she said nothing at night. When the house went still, she sat on the floor with a box of photographs. Every image felt like a lie now. David laughing, David holding Lily, David teaching her to ride a bike, same smile, same voice. But behind all of it, a stranger's name, a stranger's past. She tried to be angry, but mostly she just felt hollow. And yet, in the quietest moments, another face would rise in her mind, not David's, but Noah's, the same eyes, but different, sadder, more real. She hated that she could still feel something when she thought of him. On the 4th morning, The rain stopped. Claire woke to sunlight cutting through the window blinds. Slicing the room into stripes of golden shadow, she made coffee, packed Lily's lunch, and walked her to the bus stop like everything was normal. But as the bus pulled away, she found herself standing there, holding her phone, staring at a single message draft she hadn't deleted since Burlington. I need to know more. It sat there, unfinished, unsent. Then before she could talk herself out of it, she typed the rest. Meet me, tomorrow, the lake house, noon, and she hit send. Noah didn't expect her message. He'd spent the week trying not to think about her, about the look on her face when he told her the truth, about the way she'd walked out into the rain like she was trying to outrun gravity itself. He'd replayed it in his head a dozen times, and every time he came back to the same feeling, guilt, sharp and familiar. When his phone buzzed and her name appeared, his first instinct was to delete it. Then he read the words, meet me, tomorrow, the lake house, and for the first time in years, something in his chest moved. Not pain, not quite hope, but something alive. The next day was bright. Almost cruelly so. Claire waited on the porch of her house by the lake. The water was calm, the trees along the far shore glowing in early autumn gold. When Noah's truck appeared down the dirt road, she felt her heartbeat jump quick. Uncertain, he stepped out, hesitant at first, then more sure when he saw her waiting. He looked tired, like a man carrying years in the space between breaths. Hi, she said softly. Hi. The word hung there, heavy with everything they didn't know how to say. They sat outside, the lake before them, mugs of coffee cooling in their hands. Claire broke the silence first. You said you got a letter from him. From David? He nodded. After the crash? A year later. I thought it was a cruel joke at first. Do you still have it? He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, worn, folded at the corners, but carefully kept. He handed it to her. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Noah, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm alive and I'm trying to be better. I took your words, your name, your life, and turned them into mine. I thought I could build something good out of it. I met someone. She believes in me. She makes me want to be honest. Don't come looking for me. Please, let me have this one chance to get it right. Claire's vision blurred halfway through. She could see it now, the way David had always flinched when she asked about his past. The way he'd changed the subject when Lily asked about uncles or grandparents. The way he'd once said, sometimes love is the only truth that matters. She'd thought it was romantic. Now she understood it was a confession. Noah's voice pulled her back. You didn't know any of it, did you? She shook her head slowly. No, I thought he was honest. I thought her voice broke. I thought we built something real. He looked down, jaw tight. Maybe you did, just on borrowed ground. She laughed softly, without humor. Borrowed? I guess that's the word. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the soft lap of water against the shore. Then she asked, quietly, why did you come? He looked at her. Because he asked me not to. The honesty of it startled her. You came anyway. He nodded. I couldn't let him vanish twice. She met his eyes, the same eyes that had once made her fall in love, but different now, gentler somehow, in them. She saw the truth she'd never had with David, and for a terrifying, fleeting moment, She realized she wasn't afraid of it. The afternoon light shifted, warm and fragile. Lily's laughter echoed faintly from inside the house, chasing away the heavy, quiet dot. Claire stood. "You should stay for dinner." Noah hesitated. "I don't want to make things harder." "You already did," she said softly. "But maybe that's the only way they get better." He smiled faintly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "All right." As they walked inside, the camera of the world seemed to pull back, two silhouettes against the glow of the lake. One life ending and another just beginning to take shape. And somewhere, in the stillness between memory and forgiveness, a story that had been buried for 12 years started breathing again. Dinner was quiet, the sound of forks against plates, the ticking of the old clock above the kitchen doorway. Everything felt louder than words. Lily sat between them, talking in bursts the way only a child could, about her school play, about the frog she'd found near the dock, about how rain smelled like pennies. Noah listened, smiling faintly, though the muscles in his jaw kept tightening whenever Lily laughed. Claire noticed. She noticed everything now. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her daughter, the way he carefully avoided looking at the family photos still hanging on the wall. "Do you like frogs?" Lily asked, mid-dash bite. Noah blinked, surprised. "Yeah, sure. I used to catch them when I was your age. Did they like you back?" He smiled, a real one, quiet but warm. "Maybe. They never said otherwise." Lily giggled, satisfied with that answer, and turned back to her mashed potatoes. Claire's chest tightened. That laugh, that look, that strange, immediate bond. Something inside her whispered, they're connected. Even if they don't know how. After dinner, Lily dragged Noah to the living room to show him her drawings. "This one's me and Mummy," she said, holding up a page full of crayon colors. "And this is Daddy." Noah froze. The figure was drawn in blue, tall, smiling, holding hands with the others. Claire watched his expression carefully. Lily added proudly, "Mummy says Daddy's in the sky now, but I think he still visits when it rains." The words hit him like a soft blade. He nodded slowly. "Maybe he does." Then, quieter, almost to himself, he always liked the rain. When Lily finally went to bed, the house fell into that gentle, post-dinner quiet that makes you hear every breath. Every shifting floorboard. Claire and Noah stayed at the table, two half-finished glasses of wine between them. She said, "You didn't have to come today, I know, but you did anyway." He looked at her. "So did you." Outside, the lake shimmered under the moonlight. Through the window, Claire could see their reflections overlapping on the glass, hers and his, the shapes almost indistinguishable. She looked away. "Sometimes I don't know who I'm angry at anymore." Noah's voice was soft. "It's okay not to know." She laughed quietly, bitterly. "You sound like him when you say that." He flinched. "I'm not him, I know," she said, and for the first time that night, she sounded like she meant it. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the porch. The night air smelled like pine and wet earth. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not pretending this is easy." He gave a faint smile. "It's not supposed to be." She nodded, and when he turned to go, she called out softly, "Noah." He looked back. "Would you come by tomorrow? Lily's been asking to go fishing." He hesitated, then smiled, small, careful, hopeful. "Yeah, I'd like that." When he was gone, Claire stood on the porch a long time, listening to the night dot inside. The house felt both emptier and lighter. She turned off the lights and headed to the study, the one that had been David's. She hadn't gone in since finding the first letter. The air still smelled faintly of him, ink, cedar, and old paper. She sat at his desk, running her hand over the wooden surface. Her fingers caught on a loose panel beneath the drawer. Curious, she pulled. It came free with a soft click. Inside was a small stack of photographs wrapped in tissue, and beneath them another envelope. Her breath caught. The handwriting was David's. The envelope was addressed simply for her. She opened it with trembling hands. "Claire, if you ever find this, it means I couldn't tell you the truth myself. Not because I didn't love you, but because loving you was the only honest thing I ever did. I wanted to be better for you, for the family we made, but I built our life on borrowed names and borrowed light. Noah deserved to hate me. You deserved better. Lily deserves both. Don't let the past keep her from the future. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I stayed because she taught me how to. And if he ever finds you, let him know I never stopped trying to make peace." Tears blurred the words before she reached the end. She pressed the letter against her chest, her heart beat thudding beneath it like it was trying to sync with the ghost of his dot. She whispered, "You coward. You beautiful, broken coward." When she finally looked at the photographs, her hands trembled harder. There were pictures she'd never seen. David with Noah, younger, smiling by a lake almost identical to this one, and one that made her freeze. A baby swaddled in a hospital blanket. The date scrawled on the back, April 15th, 2017. The same week, Lily was born. But the name below it wasn't Lily Dawson. It said Lily Whitaker. For a long moment, Claire couldn't breathe. The truth she'd been chasing had finally caught her. Her entire life, her marriage, her daughter's name, her husband's love, all tangled in one impossible question. Who exactly had she built this life with? And who had been living it with her all along? Morning came without warning. A low sun broke through the mist, lighting up the lake in ribbons of gold. Claire hadn't slept. The letter sat on the table beside her, opened, worn, waiting. She'd read it again at dawn, hoping the words would change, that they'd somehow make sense the second or third time around. But they didn't. Every word still hurt. Every truth still bled, and the photo, that tiny square of paper, with her daughter's name written under a different one, lay like a wound beside her coffee cup by the time Noah's truck pulled up the gravel drive. Her hands had gone still, calm in the way hands get when the storm has already hit. Lily ran outside before Claire could stop her, laughing in the cold morning air. "Mr. Noah, you came back." He smiled, soft, real, unguarded. "Told you I would." Claire watched them from the porch, her heart twisting in ways she didn't want to name. He lifted the fishing rods he'd brought. "You ready to catch something today?" Lily nodded eagerly, taking his hand. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like any other morning, like a family. And then Claire saw the letter on the table again, and the illusion broke. They walked down to the dock together. The lake was glassy, silent, except for the soft creak of wood beneath their steps. Lily sat between them, legs swinging over the water. Humming, Noah baited her hook patiently, his fingers careful. Practiced, Claire watched the two of them, how naturally it fit, and how wrong it felt, knowing what she knew. When Lily wandered a few feet away, chasing a dragonfly, Claire finally spoke. "I found another letter." He froze, his hands stilled on the fishing line. Her voice was steady, almost to calm. It was hidden in his desk. It was addressed to me. He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. What did it say? That he loved me, she said. That he was sorry. That he built our life on lies. Noah swallowed hard. Claire, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the photo. And then there was this. He took it, hesitant. When his eyes fell on the handwriting, his breath caught. Lily Whittaker. He looked up. "That's not, it's her," she said. "Same blanket, same day. He used your name, again." The wind rippled across the lake. Soft and cold, Noah stared at the photo for a long time, the weight of it dragging the air between them into silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost breaking. "I didn't know. I don't think he wanted anyone to." He closed his eyes. "He stole everything from me once. I thought it ended there. But he..." Claire cut in, sharp, trembling. "He gave me his version of you." Noah opened his eyes. Her voice cracked. "You said you weren't him. But when I look at you, I don't know where he ends and you begin." He looked at her then. Really looked, not as the woman his brother had loved, but as the one who'd carried the truth he never could. "Claire," he said softly, "you're not wrong to hate me for what he did. But don't hate yourself for believing him. You loved who he wanted to be." Her throat tightened. "That doesn't make it better." "No," he said, "but it makes it human." They stood in silence for a long time, the lake glittering beneath the sun. Lily's laughter floated across the dock like the faintest echo of forgiveness. Finally, Claire spoke again. "She deserves to know the truth." He nodded. "She will. But not today." Claire frowned. "Why not?" "Because today she gets to be a child," he said quietly. "And you get to breathe." Something in his tone, weary, kind, unflinching, loosened something inside her for months. She'd been holding grief like a weapon. Now, for the first time, she let it fall. They sat again, side by side. After a long while, Noah said, "He wrote me once that love was the only honest thing left in him. I didn't believe it. But maybe he meant you." Claire looked at him, the same eyes, the same voice, but different in all the ways that mattered. And she realized, painfully and quietly, that she didn't see David anymore. She saw Noah. When they finally walked back to the house, the sky had gone pale and wide. Lily skipped ahead, her hair catching the light like fire. Claire whispered, "She looks like him." Noah glanced at her. "Which one?" Claire almost smiled. "Maybe both." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire stood by the lake alone. The moon floated on the water. The air still and heavy. She whispered into the quiet, "You lied to me, David, but maybe this is how I forgive you, by seeing the man you were supposed to be." Behind her, Noah's footsteps approached softly. He stopped beside her, the air between them fragile and alive. "I keep thinking," he said, "maybe we were both just the ghosts he left behind." Claire looked at him, eyes shining. "Then maybe it's time we learned how to live again." The rain started just after sunset. At first it was gentle, brushing the lake in silver ripples, then heavier, until the trees bent and the house creaked under the wind. Claire pulled the curtains shut and lit a single lamp. Lily was asleep upstairs, a nightlight glowing soft and warm. Downstairs, the windows flickered with lightning. Noah had stayed for dinner again. He'd meant to leave before the storm hit, but the sky turned faster than either of them expected. Now he stood by the door, hand on the knob, caught between leaving and staying. "You won't make it down the road in this," she said. He hesitated. "I've driven through worse." A thunderclap answered for her. The lights flickered, then steadied. "Stay," she said simply. He nodded once. They sat in the living room while the storm swallowed the world outside. A candle burned between them on the coffee table, throwing shadows up the walls. For a while they didn't speak. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, familiar, like something they both recognized. Finally, Noah said he loved nights like this. Claire glanced up. "The storms." He smiled faintly, said they made him feel small, said that was the only honest way to feel. She looked toward the window, watching rain blur the glass. "He said that to me once too." They shared a small, broken laugh, to people remembering the same ghost from different lifetimes. The thunder rolled closer. Somewhere in the kitchen, the old clock stopped ticking. Claire shivered. The power's going to go. Noah stood. "I'll check the fuse box." She followed him with a flashlight, its beams slicing through the dark hallway. The air smelled of dust and rain seeping through the old wood. When lightning flashed, she saw his face, tired, gentle. The same outline she'd memorized years ago, but changed in ways that made her ache. He found the breaker, flipped the switches, nothing happened. "Guess it's just us," he said. Voice low, back in the living room, the candle was the only light left. They sat again. Closer now because the dark left no room for distance. Claire's fingers brushed, the edge of the letter still on the table, the one she'd shown him that morning. "Do you ever wonder," she whispered, "if he's really gone?" Noah looked at her. "Every day. He lied about dying once. What's to stop him from doing it again?" "Because he wanted peace," Noah said. "And men like David only get that one way." Lightning lit the room. For a second, their faces were inches apart, caught in the same pulse of white. Then the thunder rolled, and the world went dark again. She exhaled slowly. "You talk about him like you still love him." He stared into the flame. "Maybe I do. Hating him never worked." Claire looked down. "I tried to hate him too. But then Lily laughs, and I hear him again." Silence. Then she said, almost to herself, "I don't know where any of this leaves us." He met her eyes. Alive, the wind howled. Rain hammered the roof. She reached out, without meaning to, and touched his hand. It was rough, cold, real. He didn't pull away. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. Maybe this is what he wanted us to find. Not him, but what was left. Claire felt her throat tighten. "And what's left?" He looked at her like a man who'd run out of lies. "You, lightning again." The candle guttered, their faces inches apart, breath mingling with the smell of smoke and rain. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Claire leaned in, just enough to rest her forehead against his. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something quieter. Recognition, maybe, or surrender. Outside, the wind began to ease. Noah whispered, "It's passing." Claire nodded. Not all of it. The power flickered back on, filling the house with a low hum. The sudden light felt strange, like waking up from a dream they hadn't meant to have. Claire pulled back slowly, eyes glistening. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For staying," he smiled. "I didn't have anywhere else to go." The phone rang, they both froze. It was an old landline on the wall. No one ever used it. Claire frowned. It's probably a wrong number. The ringing kept going, slow, deliberate, like it was waiting for them. Noah's voice was quiet. "Do you usually get calls this late?" She shook her head. "Never." The sound echoed through the room. One more ring, then another. She hesitated, then lifted the receiver. "Hello." Static. Then a breath, soft, familiar, and a voice she hadn't heard in a year whispered Claire. Her blood went cold. She knew that voice. It was David. For a heartbeat, the world went still. The rain, the hum of the lights, even her own breathing. Everything stopped when she heard his voice. Claire. It came through the static, low and rough, but unmistakable. Her throat locked. "Who is this?" The voice trembled. "It's me." She gripped the phone tighter. "David's dead." A pause. Then softly, painfully, "Not anymore." Across the room, Noah had gone pale. He was watching her, reading every twitch of her hand, every flicker in her eyes. Claire whispered, "Where are you?" David's breath hitched on the line. "I shouldn't have called. I just needed to hear your voice. Needed to know you were okay. You and Lily." Her stomach twisted. Her voice broke. "You don't get to say her name." "I had to disappear," he said, the words tumbling fast, desperate. "It wasn't safe. There were people." "No." Her tone sharpened. "You had us. You had a family, and you vanished." The silence that followed was jagged, like a wound reopening. When David spoke again, his voice cracked. "Is she okay?" Claire hesitated. She's perfect. And she doesn't remember you." There was a sound on the other end, a strangled breath, maybe a sob. "I never meant to hurt her," he said. "Or you. I just couldn't let them find you, find me." She repeated. "Who? David? What did you do?" But the line filled with static again. Then his voice, fainter, now whispered, "I'll send you a letter. Please, don't tell him. Tell who?" The line went dead. She stood there, frozen. The dial tone humming in her ear like a machine that had learned to mimic a heartbeat. Noah moved closer. "Who was it?" She looked at him, eyes wide, terrified, disbelieving. It was him. Noah didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "You're sure?" "I'd know his voice anywhere." He clenched his fists, jaw tightening. "What did he say?" "That he's alive. That he had to disappear." Noah turned away, running a hand over his face. "Jesus Christ." He paced the living room like a man trying to keep from breaking something. "Do you have any idea what this means?" The funeral, the company, the investigation, they all said there was no body because of the crash. Claire's voice trembled. "He said he'd send a letter. A letter." Noah snapped, then caught himself, lowering his tone. "Claire, this isn't over. Whatever he's mixed up in it didn't end with him." She wrapped her arms around herself. "What do we do?" He met her eyes, steady, fierce. "We wait for that letter, and when it comes, we read it together." That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shift of wind against the window felt like him standing just outside, watching when she finally drifted into half-sleep. The dreams came, David's face flickering between light and shadow, his voice saying, "Don't tell him." She woke at dawn to the sound of a truck engine outside. For a second, her heart leaped, but it wasn't David. It was the mail truck. She ran to the porch in her robe, bare feet cold against the wood. The mailbox was full of junk and rain-soaked envelopes, but one stood out, dry, wrapped in plastic, the handwriting unmistakable. David's single quotes is inside. She laid it on the table. Noah came down the stairs a moment later, half-dressed, eyes red from sleeplessness. He saw the envelope and froze. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Claire whispered. He kept his word. Noah's jaw tightened. "Open it." Her fingers shook as she broke the seal. The letter inside was short, scrawled in rushed handwriting, as if written from hiding. "Claire, if you're reading this, I don't have long. I'm not who you think I was. I built our life to keep you safe from the people who wanted me dead. But I failed. They know about Lily now. That's why I left. Not to save myself, to save you. Noah can help. He always could. But if he finds me, it'll only start again. Tell Lily I love her. Tell her I was never gone. I was just trying to make sure she had a world to grow up in. I'll call once more. After that, burn this. Claire finished reading, her voice barely a whisper. Noah leaned forward, every word hitting him like a blade. They know about Lily. She nodded. Whoever he was hiding from, they're still out there. Noah's eyes hardened. Then he's not the only one who's coming back. The rain outside had stopped, but the air inside the house felt heavier than before. The past hadn't just returned, it had found their address. The morning after the letter arrived, the house felt different. Still, heavy, like the walls were listening. Claire sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty coffee cup she'd forgotten to drink. The letter lay beside it, folded again and again until it was soft from her hands. Every line replayed in her head. They know about Lily. Don't find me. Burn this. She hadn't burned it. She couldn't. Upstairs, she could hear Lily's soft humming through the floorboards, some song she'd made up, something about rainbows and frogs. The sound should have been comforting. WASN single quotes. Noah returned that morning, his truck crunching over the wet gravel. He looked different, sharper, focused, carrying an edge she hadn't seen before. "I made some calls," he said, stepping inside, "to an old friend from the bureau. I wanted to confirm something about the crash." Claire frowned. And he set a folder on the table. Inside were photographs, the wreckage of David's car, burned beyond recognition. They said there was DNA, but look at the report date 3 weeks after the accident. That's not standard. Her voice trembled. Meaning someone needed time to plant evidence. Whoever declared him dead wanted him to stay that way. She swallowed hard. And now he's back. He nodded slowly, which means whoever wanted him gone might come for him again. Or for us. They both turned at the sound of movement upstairs. Lily's footsteps, light and quick. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Then the phone rang. This time, it wasn't the landline. It was Claire's cell. Unknown number. Noah's eyes flicked toward it. "Put it on speaker." She did. A voice, distorted, mechanical, came through. "Mrs. Dawson, this is about your husband." Her pulse spiked. "Who is this?" "Burn the letter," the voice said. "If you want to keep your daughter safe." Then click, the line went dead. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Noah grabbed the phone, redialing, nothing. The number was blocked. Who the hell was that? Claire whispered. He looked at her, jaw tight. Someone who knows we have the letter. Lily's voice called from upstairs. Mummy, can I go outside? Claire forced her voice steady. Not right now, sweetheart. It's too wet. Noah started pacing. If someone's watching us, they could be close. She felt cold all over. You think they're here? I think we can't take chances. He went to the window, scanning the tree line that bordered the lake. The fog had begun to lift, but the air still shimmered with moisture and something else. Movement of figure near the dock. Too far to make out, but standing still, watching. Noah froze. Claire, get Lily. They moved fast. Upstairs, Lily was by the window, pressing her small hands against the glass. Mummy, there's a man outside. Claire's heart lurched. Sweetheart, come here. But when she turned back toward the window, the figure was gone. Downstairs, Noah had grabbed the old rifle from the cabinet. He looked at her, not scared, just resolute. We're leaving now. Where? I know a safe place. Claire hesitated. If we run, we'll look guilty. We're already guilty of knowing too much. He handed her his jacket. Get her ready. 10 minutes later, they were in the truck. The rain had started again, light and cold, tapping on the windshield like fingers. Lily was quiet in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Claire turned in her seat. It's okay, baby. We're just taking a trip. Lily nodded, trusting, small. Noah's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. There's a cabin about 20 miles north. Remote, off-grid. We'll figure our next move there. Claire stared out the window as the house disappeared behind them. Her home, her memories, the life she'd built on lies. It all vanished into the rain. They reached the cabin by dusk, an old wooden place tucked between pine and rock, half forgotten by time. Inside, it smelled of dust and cedar. Safe, at least for now. Noah checked the perimeter while Claire unpacked. A few things from Lily's backpack. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Her hands shook as she answered. Hello? Silence. Then a single sound. Not a voice, not words. A child's laughter. Lily's. Claire froze. Who is this? The laughter faded into static, then cut off. Her blood ran cold. Claire. Noah called from outside. She turned slowly. The window by the kitchen was open, and on the table where the letter had been was a new envelope. Same handwriting. David's. The letter sat between them like a live wire. Same paper, same handwriting, same impossible name. David Whittaker. Noah stared at it for a long time before speaking. He found us. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Or someone wants us to think he did. Lightning flashed outside the cabin window, white against the trees. The wind had started to rise again, not a storm yet, but close. Lily was asleep in the next room, curled beneath a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Claire traced her finger along the edge of the envelope. He said he'd call. Not right. Then open it, Noah said quietly, before someone else does. She did. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, the ink slightly smeared. Claire, if you're reading this, it means they're close. You can't trust anyone, not even him. Especially not him. Lily isn't safe where you are. They'll come for her first. There's a key under the third step at the old boathouse. Inside, you'll find the rest of what I couldn't say. Take it and leave before midnight." DCLAIRE's pulse thundered in her ears. She looked up at Noah. "He says not to trust you." He froze. "What?" She slid the letter across the table. He read it, eyes darkening with each word. "This is insane," he muttered. "He's manipulating you. He's done it before. Or he's warning me about me." Her voice cracked. "You have to see how this looks, Noah. You show up out of nowhere. You know everything about his disappearance. And then what?" His voice rose, low and rough. "I saved you, Claire. And maybe that's what he wanted you to do." The air between them felt electric, brittle. Outside, thunder rumbled like the ground remembering its own weight. Noah took a step closer. "You really think I'd hurt you, or her?" "I don't know what to think anymore," she whispered. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" "To prove I'm not him," and he was gone. The silence that followed felt wrong. Claire stood there, heart racing, until the sound of the truck engine faded into the distance. Then another sound, footsteps, slow, crunching over gravel. Outside the cabin, she turned toward the door, her breath catching. The porch light flickered once, then died. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass, one knock dot, then another. She grabbed the old rifle from beside the fireplace, her hands shaking. "Who's there?" No answer. The third knock was softer, almost familiar. "Claire." Her knees nearly buckled. It was his voice. She moved closer, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. The doorknob turned slightly, not forced, just touched. "Don't open it," she whispered to herself, but she did. The door swung open. Rain blew in, cold and sharp, and standing there, drenched, gaunt, eyes hollow with exhaustion, was David. He looked older, thinner, haunted. His clothes were torn, his beard unkempt, but the face, it was him, alive. "Claire," he said softly, voice breaking, "you shouldn't have stayed here." She couldn't move, couldn't speak. All she could do was stare at the man who had died in her arms. Now breathing in front of her, she whispered, "How?" He took a trembling step forward. "There's no time." "They followed me." She backed up, the rifle still in her hands. "Don't." His eyes softened. "It's me. You know it's me. Prove it." He smiled, the same crooked smile that used to undo her. "The first night you couldn't sleep after Lily was born, I held her until morning so you could. You said it was the only time you ever felt safe." Her vision blurred. It was him. It had to be. Then headlights cut through the window. A truck pulling up fast. Noah. David turned toward the noise, panic flashing in his eyes. "You shouldn't have called him." "I didn't," she whispered. The door slammed open again. Noah burst in, soaked, gun drawn. He froze when he saw David. His breath caught. "Jesus Christ." David stared back, just as stunned. "You're supposed to be dead." Noah's grip tightened. "So are you." Claire stood between them, one man she'd buried, one she'd learned to trust. Lightning flashed again, and for a second their faces looked identical. David took a step forward. "He's not who you think he is." Noah's voice dropped to a growl. "Don't listen to him, Claire. You have no idea what he's done." The wind screamed through the open door. rain soaking the floor, and between them, the woman they'd both once loved raised the rifle. "Stop," she said. "Both of you." But neither man moved. For a long, terrible second, no one breathed. The rain outside beat against the cabin like fists. Lightning flashed, throwing 3 shadows against the walls, 1 woman, 2 men. The same blood wearing different faces. Claire stood between them, rifle trembling in her hands. "Put it down," Noah said. "Don't," David said. At the same time, she looked from one to the other, both soaked, both shaking, both telling the truth in different ways. Her voice cracked. "Someone tell me what the hell is happening." David spoke first. "The company wasn't mine, Claire. It was theirs. I was a name, a mask. When I found out what they were doing, laundering money through foundations in my name, they tried to erase me. That's why I faked the crash." Noah scoffed. "You faked your own death and left her to clean up your mess." "I left to protect her," David said fiercely. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly." Noah stepped closer, gun lowered but ready. "You didn't want to face what you did. So you ran." Claire's voice broke. "What did you do, David?" He looked at her, then eyes hollow, desperate. "You remember the adoption papers you never saw? The ones you said got lost?" She froze. "Yes, they weren't lost," he whispered. "They were hidden." "Lily's not. Don't you dare," Noah snapped. But David kept going. "She's not mine. She's his." The words hit like a blow. The room spun. Claire stared at both men, one pale, one wide-eyed, both guilty. "No," she whispered. "That's not." David's voice cracked. "You were pregnant when I left for the contract in Oslo. You told me you'd miscarried. But she was born after that. I found the records. I found everything." She backed away, shaking her head. "Stop." Noah's voice was low, broken. "It wasn't like that." David turned on him. "You took everything from me." "I tried to save her," Noah shot back. "You were gone. She was alone. And you, the rest was drowned by thunder." Claire dropped the rifle. It hit the floor with a thud that sounded final. Lily, her daughter. The only thing that had ever been pure. And now this. Her voice came out like smoke. "You both lied to me." David's face softened. "Claire," she raised her hand. "Don't." The storm roared louder, shaking the windows. David's eyes darted toward the back door. "They're here." "What?" Noah snapped. I was followed. As if on cue, headlights flared outside, 2 black SUVs stopping near the tree line. "Federal or private?" Noah demanded. David's jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" He turned to Claire. "Take Lily. Go out the back, down to the boathouse. The key's still there. There's a file inside, names, numbers, enough to end this. And you." He smiled faintly, like a man already gone. "I started this. I'll end it." Noah grabbed his arm. "You don't have to die again." David looked at him, really looked, for the first time in years. "You already took my life once, brother. At least let me decide how it ends." Noah's grip faltered. Outside, doors slammed. Voices shouted. Claire ran upstairs, heart in her throat, scooping Lily from bed. "Mummy," the girl mumbled. Baby. "We're going on a little trip." When she came down, David was gone. The front door hung open, wind and rain screaming through it. Noah was by the back door, his face set. He's giving us a chance. Let's move. They slipped out into the dark. The path to the lake was slick, the air cold enough to sting. Behind them came the gunfire, short, sharp bursts. Then silence. The boathouse stood at the edge of the lake, half hidden by trees. Claire found the third step, pulled the key, and unlocked the door. Inside, the smell of oil and damp would fill the air. There, beneath a tarp, was a metal box. She opened it. Inside documents, flash drives, photographs, evidence. Noah looked through them quickly, his hands steady even as his eyes burned. This is everything. He was telling the truth. Claire whispered, and he's out there alone. Before she could move, footsteps approached, slow, uneven, they turned. David stood in the doorway, soaked in rain and blood. He was smiling faintly. Told you, I'd end it. He stumbled forward. Noah caught him before he fell. Who? Noah demanded. Who shot you? David's breath rattled. Doesn't matter. It's done. They'll come for me, not you. Claire dropped beside him, tears spilling freely now. Don't do this. Not again. He looked at her, the same eyes she'd once trusted with her life. Take her somewhere new, he whispered. Don't let her grow up in our shadows. His hand found hers, weak but warm. Tell Lily. Her fathers loved her. Then, softly, he was gone. The rain eased. The wind fell silent. Noah closed his brother's eyes. He wasn't all bad, he said quietly. No, Claire whispered. Just human. 6 months later, the sun rose over the same lake, calmer now, like it had forgotten how to rage. Claire sat on the porch of a small house in Oregon, coffee in hand, watching Lily chase bubbles across the yard inside. A newspaper lay folded open on the table. Whitaker scandal exposed. Offshore network shut down. Noah stepped outside, 2 mugs in hand. Still can't believe it's over, he said. It's not, Claire replied softly, but it's quieter. He smiled faintly. I can live with quiet. Lily ran up to them, laughing. Mummy, look. Rainbows. Claire looked down at her daughter, the living proof of everything they'd lost and everything they still had. She smiled. Yeah, sweetheart. I see them. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire sat by the lake with a pen and a blank piece of paper. She began to write. Dear David, you were right. The past doesn't disappear. It just learns to breathe differently. Lily's growing fast. She laughs like you. She looks at Noah the way I once looked at you. Maybe that's how forgiveness works. Slowly, quietly, in the spaces we never meant to leave empty. We're safe now. You can rest. C. She folded the letter, lit a match, and watched it burn. The smoke rose into the night sky, curling into stars. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt.